Hey, how's everybody doing? You doing all right? So I'm feeling great about the fact that I get to sit with not only an incredible engineer, producer, singer, songwriter, but as of recently, I would like to thank a good friend of mine.
I think so.
I think so.
Yeah, I can confirm that.
I met Gloria, and I don't know how you felt, but I was kind of like, I feel like I've known this person my whole life, you know, and it was just an instant connection, and we instantly started making music together, and in a lot of ways, I think that that's what this is about, you know, coming together, women coming together, not just for the purpose of doing events together, but coming together to really create with one another. I'd also like to throw out a couple more things about Gloria. Started her career at MSR, which was one of the premier studios in New York City in Midtown, where she worked with everyone from Babyface to Beyonce to A Tribe Called Quest to Frank Ocean and so many other incredible artists, and has worked across very many genres of music. So musical theater, hip hop, R&B. I think there's some rock in there, jazz music. So we're going to have an opportunity tonight, and I've prepared a few questions, but we'd like to also, time permitting, throw it out to the group. So if you have some things that you might want to say, I'd hopefully like to take one or two questions from the audience. But let's kick it off with Gloria. I have a handful of questions, so let's start with, the majority of your sound engineering credits are within the hip hop and R&B genres, but you've also worked on quite a few musicals, mostly Frozen. Can you talk about what it's like working across genres?
It's awesome. I mean, it definitely keeps me on my toes. Like you said, I started working out at a major recording studio, MSR Studios in Midtown, where I worked from, I mean, one day it was, you know, the Motown musical. The next day you're working with a jazz quartet. The next day you're working with a rock band, a rapper, producer, you know, and on down the line. So I was definitely prepared very early, and, you know, was able to gain the skills to pretty much, you know, flip-flop genres. So now it's pretty easy, and I love it. I mean, there are things that you can learn from, say, musical theater, and skills you can attain that you may not get from working with a rapper or a pop artist, and vice versa. So I just use the skills that I gained from working from one genre to the next, and it makes me a stronger producer and engineer, and definitely broadens my mind to, you know, different things. Yeah.
Can you talk to maybe one project in two different genres that you felt like you used very specific skills that were transferable?
I mean, probably working on a musical theater project where there's 50 plus musicians. I mean, you're talking strings, drums, bass, guitar, choir, and then going to, you know, a very intimate setting where you're working with one producer. You know, in a way, working in intimate settings can be more difficult. I mean, it's really about gaining people skills. I guess that's the main thing. You know, working with 50 people, you know, with a range of egos and talent and, you know, demands, and then sitting in a room with one producer and trying to figure this person out and trying to figure out how they work and, you know, what their little idiosyncrasies are. I mean, it's just about gaining people skills, I think. Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, I'm going to my next question. When working on A Tribe Called Quest's final album in 2016, were you Ow! Oh, I need a sound. Were you able to experiment a bit and propose new mixes, or did you rely on their experience?
No, probably the most, you know, eye-opening experience for me has been working with Q-Tip. I mean, he's so open to new ideas, and, you know, he's very much involved to this day on the artistic craft, and he was open to me doing, you know, proposing ideas. And really, I mean, when it came down to it, we were sort of in a time crunch. So, I mean, I had to mix a song or two or propose an idea here and there just for the sake of time. And he's definitely open to everything at any point, and he encourages it. Absolutely, yeah.
Awesome. Can you speak to what it's like working with somebody like Q-Tip, in my experience, I found the bigger the artist, the more humble. And can you speak to his humility and what it is to work with somebody who clearly has a lot of confidence, but it doesn't move into the realm of arrogance, and how important that is to building a career from a spiritual perspective?
Sure, yeah. I think his humbleness, his humility. His humility comes from probably the longevity. I mean, not only success, but I mean, you're talking 25 plus years in the game, you know what I mean? He's still respected by, young and old artists. So, sorry, what was the question?
The question was, can you really speak to the importance of that?
Oh, right, gotcha.
To building a career.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the only way you can evolve as an artist is by being open to new ideas. I mean, if you're not humble, then you're not open. That's the main thing. I mean, it's just times change, music changes, what people are listening. I mean, that whole thing, it changes. So if you're not, you know what I mean, if you're set in like, oh, I know, I've been successful at doing this one thing, so that's what I'm going to do. If you're closed to new ideas, then you're not going to evolve. Yeah.
My next question has to do with freelancing, right? So I would say most engineers and producers who work professionally, no matter how successful they are freelancers. You're filling out W-9s and you're submitting invoices to various clients. So can you speak to what that process has been like for you, and also how do you keep up with the current needs in the industry as it pertains to that and being a freelancer?
Sorry, what was the beginning? What was the first part of the question? Yeah, let's circle back.
That was good. So, freelancing.
Oh, freelancing, right, gotcha.
Freelancing, and how do you manage that? Even from an administrative perspective, right? How do you manage it, but also
sending out invoices and taxes and
exactly. Taxes.
Don't forget about taxes.
As it is March.
Save as you
time
go.
is approaching. This just became a financial workshop. Like how do you manage it from an administrative perspective? But hold that thought. But also from a just networking perspective to create more business for yourself. Yeah.
I mean, I was really lucky early on to, I worked at a major studio for 6 years. So all that time was spent networking and honing my craft. And if it came to sending someone an email after a session, just like, hey, it was nice working with you. You know what I mean? Just, if you need any help in the future, let me know. I was really lucky to get that time and to make contacts that I still use. And so when I went freelance, I actually got the Q-Tip gig from a college friend. So it was really about, and who I had kept in touch with over the years. So it was really about reaching out, every so often to someone and just saying hello, because out of sight, out of mind. You know what I mean? If you don't remind people about who you are and what you're doing, then they'll forget. You know what I mean? And you don't come to mind when these opportunities come up. So it's really about networking, keeping, getting your name out there. What I do now I'm sorry, what was the second part of your question?
Administrative part of it. But I think you're about to talk about something we're interested in. So just go with you.
Ooh, well, I don't know.
You really about to say something?
What was I going to say?
I
don't know. Oh no, it'll come back. It'll come back. It's age. Yes, it'll come back.
What's the same age? What you saying?
Yeah, no. But it made administratively, like just keeping on top of, taxes, saving as you go, sending out invoices, setting your rates. You know what I mean? Just setting your price, knowing your value. Yeah, it's important.
Well, I'm going to take a detour and I'm going to ask you to explain what you mean by know your value, because there are a lot of freelancers in the room, a lot of aspiring producers. What do you mean specifically by that?
It's funny because when you first start out, like there's a temptation to do, especially when you're working with friends, because they're sort of all your first client base. You'll do a lot of work for free, and sometimes it's great when you're starting out because you need the experience and you need the room to make mistakes. You'll see that you'll end up doing a lot of work for free, but there will come a point where you'll have to set a price, and that could be based on what professionals in the industry are making. It could be based on your experience, based on the client. So it's just important to know where you are in that spectrum and setting a price and sort of sticking to it. Yeah.
When do your rates go up?
Well, I mean, for me, it came with, credits. I mean, working on major projects. I mean, I had worked for a long time. I mean, I worked for a studio for 6 years, and then I was doing work for free when I went freelance because I needed to build that client base. So I took jobs for free. I got a bunch of major credits, and it's just easier to justify that rate. So I mean, it comes with credits, comes with Grammys. You know what I mean? It comes with platinum or gold certifications. It comes with, I mean, just working with a major artist. Like if you work with if you were doing work for free one day and then you work with Cardi the next day, your rates might go up. I mean, they go up. I'm just saying, they go up. So yeah.
Okay. You did a recent interview with DJ Booth, actually 2 years ago, and when you worked with William Orbit, you used your songwriting skills a bit. You talked about that. How did that further your process, engineering and then having to put on the songwriter hat?
That was a special experience. I mean, I started my career out wanting to just just write and produce. Fell in love with engineering and kind of went down that track. And I mean, I got a lot of success with that very early on. So meeting William and sort of expressing my desire to get back into the creative end, I mean, he sort of validated me as a songwriter and a producer. I mean, I kind of just, on a whim, just told him what I really wanted to do. He's like, okay, here's some tracks, write to him. So I wrote, and I met William Orbit is famous for producing the Ray of Light album, which is one of Madonna's biggest albums. So just getting that validation from someone at that level was it just inspired me to sort of reach back into my creative bag and get back into it.
Yeah. Did you, from a personal perspective, did you find it hard to switch back?
To switch back into songwriting? Not really. I mean, I had been doing it the whole time. So I was just motivated to get the opportunity. I mean, it's hard for me to sort of switch the different sides of my brain, like in a session, like if I'm engineering and then I'm writing or producing. But I mean, in that moment, it just felt natural, yeah. Mm-hmm.
You've worked with Babyface. Please tell us about that.
This is Ebonie's personal, this is just, of all the people, like, this is just something she wants to know for her. And, I feel her because that was a major moment for me. And, like, if you don't know who Babyface is, you just do some research.
It's not Blueface.
Not Blueface.
That's a different artist.
It's a different face. It's a different face. But Babyface was like one of my idols. I was able to work with him while working on or assisting Beyonce's 4 album. He was one of the writers, and he just sounded like Babyface. He sounded like my childhood, like just growing up on 90s R&B. If you're into that, he sounded like that. He wrote like that, and I just can't let it go. It was it was a defining moment. Did he have
a guitar with him?
He had a guitar. He's left-handed, and he didn't learn how to play left-hand guitar, so he flips the guitar upside down and actually plays, like, he plays it backwards, and it looks crazy, but it sounds like Babyface, so it's awesome. I love it. I just wish he was here.
What did he smell like? Did he smell?
He smelled like you would think he would smell. I don't know. Like, clearly, that's obvious. Come on.
It's awesome. You worked on Solange's. I need to know these things, You worked on Solange's A Seat at the Table, and I think it's super appropriate to bring this up because Solange had an album drop today, right? Which is really interesting. I would like to know a little bit about her process, how you supported her during her trajectory, and this is a 3-part question. This is 77.
You're gonna have to circle back because I just forget. Okay.
And how do you feel like this new album, if you've heard it, speaks to the last one as a natural continuation of A Seat at the Table?
I mean, she's amazing. It's really just been a special opportunity to watch, and we've all watched her kind of transform into the artist she is. And like, you know, she released a few projects early on, but obviously like she needed to find her voice. But I mean, in the studio, I was involved in her sessions when working with Q-Tip, who produced Borderline on A Seat at the Table. And she's awesome. I mean, a lot of what we did was sort of brainstorming and coming up, she was sort of coming up with the melodies and the concepts. And as an engineer, you sort of, you want to facilitate that process. You want to be helpful, but you don't want to get in the way. So it was really about, you know, just having this artist, and this was before she released it, so we didn't know what it was going to be, but like, I think she had the big picture. And it was just amazing just watching her come up. And I think it's pretty evident, especially on this new project, that she has a knack for melody. And I think that was a thing that sticks out to me, just how long she spent, you know, trying to figure it out, and make it unique and make it her own. And then now you're gonna have to remind me about the second part of your question.
I don't remember that.
You don't remember? Oh, how the continuation into the, I mean, she's grown up. I mean, you know, conceptually it feels like the first album might have been more political. This one is more personal, more sensual, but it just feels like it's just the right jump, right? I mean, the melodies, just the jazz influences with the trap, and it's perfect to me. I mean, I stayed up, I poured a glass of wine. I was waiting. I was like, I'm not gonna fall asleep. Like, I'm gonna listen to this album all the way through. It was awesome.
And it's a lot of, okay.
Yeah.
From a producer's perspective, the sequencing of the record is so interesting, and it's almost feels like a collection of voice memos that have been strung together very intentionally that create one huge long track in a way, just kind of all.
So we just gonna pretend the lights didn't go.
I mean, I was trying to just rock.
It's just
with it.
me? Like, am I just in this alternate universe?
You know, I was just gonna rock with it.
Okay, but
Yeah,
keep
it's
going.
fine. Because we have light.
We are the light, yeah.
So. Woo! Women's Month. But the sequencing, can you speak to that? Like, what was your take on that? The amount of tracks and the way they were sequenced.
I was stuck in the string of songs. I think it's Flow. No, it's Wait to the Show, Flow, Almeida. There's like this one sweet spot. I don't know if any of you have ever been in the room with an artist who's actually sequencing, and it's really important. And a lot of times it doesn't come across to the listener, but it makes sense to that artist. It felt good. I mean, I don't normally like interludes, but it just felt natural. And I'm sure it was very thought out. And I mean, there's definitely this sweet spot, like in the middle of the album, where you're like, yeah, she got it. She's in her bag.
You know, what I thought was interesting is how I listened on Spotify, and so the albums flow into one another. And I wasn't always aware when the new album stopped and A Seat at the Table began. And it just really felt like a nice flow, a nice stream of consciousness. But that, I think, is the thing that happens when an artist has really found their stride creatively in their voice. So you were part of that.
I was.
Yeah.
I'm really happy to say that I
Pretty
was.
awesome.
Yeah, it's great.
Can you speak to the importance of engineer and producer self-care? Given the hours and the expectations of the job, what are some ways that you maintain balance and proper health?
Yeah.
That is a good question.
It's a great question. It's great. I mean, and you know, especially as an engineer. I mean, I think a lot of times as a producer, you're given a little bit more leeway. As an engineer, especially, I mean, if you want to be successful, you just have to be there. And sometimes people don't really realize how much you're there. You know, I mean, even starting out early on, like I would sleep in the studio. I would literally not leave, and it felt. I mean, I was excited to be there, so it wasn't, you know, I didn't think it was a bad thing. But, you know, it gets to a point where you do have to, especially as a freelancer, schedule time for yourself. Whether that means like, oh, I don't work on weekends, or I only work these hours on weekends, or there's one day a week that I don't work. You know what I mean? Whether it's working out for you or yoga, meditation, whatever that is, you do have to schedule time for yourself. And I've had to learn the hard way, how to do that, but it's definitely important. And it'll make your work better. I mean, if you're mixing a song for 10 hours, at some point your ears get tired and you're not hearing correctly. You need to take a break, you know what I mean? And come back to it fresh. And a lot of times you'll work on things one night, wake up in the morning and play it, whether you're producing or mixing or whatever it is. And you're like, oh, this isn't as good as I thought it was when I went to sleep. You know what I mean? Like, I thought this was really good. Or, but I mean, the point is you do have to schedule time for yourself, know when to take breaks, and whatever that break is for you, it's important. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. When did you realize your influence on young women and girls who look up to you? When?
Probably after working on A Seat at the Table and A Tribe Called Quest. We got it from here. I did the DJ Booth article and our interview, and I started getting, just like tweets and posts and replies from women who were expressing how important I was. And I'm like, oh, okay, I've been doing this for a long time, and like, oh, you're noticing, not that, oh, now you're noticing, but I put my head down and I worked for a long time, and for selfish reasons, because I had goals for myself. And then you realize, oh, wait, I'm important because, women and young girls need to see someone who looks like them because they need to be inspired. You know what I mean? Or not. Especially when you're doing something they want to do or not. I mean, I watch the Oscars and I'm seeing these black women win awards and I'm inspired. So it really doesn't matter if these people are doing what you want to do. It's just about having that visibility and a lot of times that is motivation. Like when you want to give up, you're like, well, it's not just about me. It's about all these other women. Yeah. So, yeah.
I love that. So, well, how does this realization affect how you navigate your career, if it does at all?
I mean, as far as maybe the projects I take on? Yeah, that's important. I do think about that. I mean, I think just working is important. You know what I mean? And I don't ever get work that I think isn't important. So I think it's just about I have to keep going. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, honestly, those are all my questions. What? Drew, do we have some time to throw it to the audience? If you have a question that you'd like to ask Gloria or myself.
No questions from people I know. I see people in here I know, and it's this row. No questions from them. No. But anybody else? Oh.
Hi. Hello. Is it working? Okay. I'm Sage.
Hi, Sage.
Nice to meet you. Sorry if you covered this already, but I want to know if you went to school for engineering and producing, or if it's something that you kind of fell into as a trade craft, and what you would give advice to young women who may have not gone to school for it but want to get into it, and different ways to go about that.
So I went to Temple University for, I guess the major was broadcasting, telecommunications, and mass media. So it was pretty much we did everything from recording to TV production to video editing. It was kind of across the board. And then I focused on recording industry. Most of my training has come from doing internships. When I was at Temple, I would commute from Philly to New York to intern at Battery Studios, which was my first internship. So the advice I would give to you, even if you haven't gone to school, try to intern at a studio. Come to events like this, network with friends who are producers or engineers. If go to shows, meet artists. Just try to put yourself out there as, what do you do? Are you an engineer, producer?
I produce and I teach.
Okay, cool, yeah. It's just about meeting people, networking with friends, going to shows. Maybe there's an up-and-coming artist you like that you might want to put yourself out to, different things like that. But, yeah. But school isn't necessarily the only route, is what I'm saying.
Hey, how's it going? Music producer, my name's Jacoby. One quick question. What's one habit you feel like has led to your success now? If you had to give advice on one thing we need to do as producers and engineers consistently to get to where you are today.
Do you have the answer for this? I'm going to open this up to Ebony as well. We can brainstorm together. One habit as an engineer producer that has led to just one? No, I got you.
Well, I can think of some things I do. For me, it's about, engineering-wise at least, is about understanding the nuts and bolts of the technology. You know, in every session, am looking at manuals while I'm in the session, usually. I don't skimp on that, and there are a lot of people that do, and it can make the difference between you really knowing what you're doing and you just doing things because you've picked up a habitual way to do them. It's really easy to fall into that habit, especially as an engineer, where you're just like, I know if I plug this here, it'll work, and I know if I put this on and I have this preset, it'll work. But you should know why. It should go further than that. If I plug this cable into this device and it works, you should have some sort of sense of why. And to me, the science of it, I've fallen in love with just as much as the creative part of it. And it is a study. I read all the time. Producers and engineers, if they have a book that they've put out. I recently just read Al Schmidt's book. I don't know if you guys know who Al Schmidt is. He has a book called On the Record. I would love to be able to tell you it's just about hanging out with folks and just kicking it and being in certain spaces, but it's really about educating yourself and falling in love with the craft of it and focusing on that. And for me, that's been the thing that's gotten me around. I think is just the passion for the education of it and making sure I know as much as I can about the craft.
I want to piggyback off of that because it came to me. Also, I think from session to session, and I'm sure you can attest to this, just being prepared. If you're a producer, if it's organizing sounds, if it's getting sounds together for a session, if you're engineering, if it's researching, maybe you've never worked with this artist before. What mic do they use? You know what I mean? What is their sound? What is So it's all about I guess it boils down to organization and preparation. Definitely helps. Especially when you don't have a lot of information, when you're put on a session and you haven't been giving, and you really don't have that much to go on. It's like, okay, well, you really stand apart from the crowd because you're prepared and you had that forethought. So.
Hey, my name is Patty. I'm actually I'm actually an animator, currently in school in University of the Arts in Philadelphia, but I'm originally from here. You mentioned William Orbit, working with him and Ray of Light, and that's one of my favorite albums of all times, my favorite producer. But I was hearing a lot of your journey and how you had to overcome being a woman of color in an industry where it's not dominant, and I kind of go through the same thing as an animator. So I wanted to know if there was ever a time where you felt like you were discouraged, and how did you overcome such adversities?
Yeah, I mean, I've had a few incidents where I've definitely been made to feel uncomfortable, whether it's being black or being a woman or being both at the same time. But it's never discouraged me. It's only motivated me. I've never felt discouraged, and so I can't answer that question. But no, it's only ever motivated me. And William would be really happy that you're his biggest fan. I just want to say that. He's such a sweetheart. But yeah, no, absolutely, it only motivates me. Yeah.
I can relate. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Krithi, and I'm learning how to produce, and thank you so much for sharing your experiences today. And I was just wondering, what would you suggest to someone who's learning how to produce and mix about working with like actual gear, analog gear versus working entirely on a digital platform?
You have to study. I mean, you have to refer to, I mean, I refer to manuals, Ebony refers to manuals. I mean, going backwards, I mean, a lot of the structure we get from these DAWs are from the analog gear. So you have to know the language, but you have to learn the language. And it's really about, getting in places, obviously, where they have that gear. So whether it's interning or getting job at studios or volunteering your time, whatever it is, but it's, reading the manuals, just doing the research. Yeah, absolutely. Mm.
2 more questions.
Hi, my name is Viv. I heard that you've worked with Frank Ocean before. I know that Frank is like very behind the scenes, and he doesn't like to do a lot of interviews and stuff. So how was the creative process with him, working with him?
He's amazing. I was lucky to work with him early on, right before Nostalgia Ultra came out. And he was just, it was evident, and no one knew who he was at that point. It was evident that he was just like in another lane, and it was really obvious. But he was awesome. He was just in another lane, and it was obvious even then. But he's amazing, yeah. Mm-hmm. Like a true artist.
Hey, I'm Vera. I'm an engineer. I also came up in a studio. I came up at Electric Lady for
Awesome.
like a few years, and
Mm-hmm.
then I went freelance. And I was curious about what you said about going freelance and then like doing some gigs for free just to build up your own roster. And did you find that any of the ones that you actually did for free in that time like led to like the good paid gigs, or was it like that led to something else? Led to the good paid gigs,
Yeah, it led to something else.
Yeah.
It's hard to do a gig for free and then ask someone to start paying you. Not that can't happen, but it usually led to something else, another connection. Maybe I learned something in the session that I was able to apply to another thing. But it's hard. But it's when I say set your price, I say that because it's hard to go from free to, oh, you should start paying me now, because they're like, why? I don't. But you were free before. But no, you have to set your price. Yeah, it's difficult, but yeah, you got to start it at some point.
Amazing. So big round of applause for Gloria and Ebonie Smith.